Okay. Hi, Alan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
So, you've got a book out called The Choices, and we'll get to that in a minute. I saw in your bio it says experienced as a Congressional Fellow in the United States Senate.
I worked for Frank Lautenberg, from Senator from New Jersey for over a year. The OPM has a program of fellowships in the Senate and the House too. And I applied for it and they selected me. And it was a wonderful experience. You really get to see how the system works and how you can actually make things better. Working, especially I think in the Senate, is a terrific institution. And Ladenburg was just an exceptional individual, worked extremely hard and didn't bother too much with campaign financing and basically supported what he thought was right. And after, maybe 3 weeks or so there, I basically was given the responsibility to develop legislation that I thought he would favor. And so I wrote 3 bills, and it was wonderful to see one of them, Community Education Employment Centers, actually passed the Senate and was part of the vocational education amendments of that year. Unfortunately, it didn't get funded, but it went through, and I write a number of op-eds, usually for the Star Ledger, or New Jersey's largest paper. And I just wrote one, in effect saying this is really what we need. Is the press called them super schools back then, where these kids in the inner cities can get, super teachers, couple meals a day, long programs, a lot of guidance help, a lot of things that they're not getting at home. And that's what that piece of legislation would have done. So I wrote an op-ed trying to plug it again, hoping that maybe someone would pick it up before too long.
So, was this a paid gig or is this like an internship?
I just continued to get paid my Department of Labor salary. I worked for the Labor Department for 35 years. And on the fellowship, you just continue to get paid by labor.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's sort of like a paid internship. You're still working for the Department of Labor, but you're assigned to the Senate.
Yes, to Senator Lautenberg.
Okay, I see. I see how that works. No, I'd never heard of that, so I was curious what that was.
I highly recommend it. It was just so fulfilling to watch these professionals work as hard as they work and trying to push through legislation that's really needed. And it's amazing how fast they can work. Like the no smoking on airplanes was actually Lautenberg's accomplishment. He controlled a lot of budget processes and fell on the staff's had a process that he thought would work, and it did work. And now you don't have to fight cigarette smoke in airplanes because of that. So they, in addition to working on a piece of legislation for many months and writing it and trying to get it through, sometimes they can act really quick and make an impact.
So you've got a book called The Choices. Is how many books have you written now?
I've written 7, I think. Yeah, five novels and 2 nonfiction. When I first retired from the department, I wrote a book called Employment Opportunity with a really close friend of mine, Don Yale. And it was kind of a unique, I had spent many years working for the Employment Service and the Labor Market Information folks. And so I had this idea of you do a book that talks about processes. You know, what's a labor market? What kind of thought process should you go through when you're considering a career? And then he was a computer expert, and he did a CD-ROM that went with the book. So you'd be reading different chapters, and then you could actually look at data that and explore the data that were relevant to the information in the book part. So that was the first book, and then the next one was Selling Out America's Democracy for Prager, and that one basically looks at or tries to answer the question why the American public is unhappy, why they're not getting what they feel they deserve. And basically, it lays blame on lobbyists and campaign financing. That those two forces have just denied us much of what we know we need. I mean, I guess the best example is guns. I mean, the number of shootings in Philadelphia every night is just atrocious. It's just unbelievable. And yet, you don't see any significant steps taken to turn that around. And when all those kids got killed up in New England, and the president said, well, you know, this is it, we're going to do it, they still couldn't do it. And, you know, it's just the force of money and the force of lobbyists that have denied us much of what we need. And so that was the subject matter of Selling Out America's Democracy. And there's some solutions in there that I think would work, but, you know, I don't know how realistic they are given the politics of today. So after I wrote that one, I basically said to my wife, this isn't fun anymore. This is more like work. So then I wrote a novel called Island of Betrayal. And it's partly about time I spent in American Samoa trying to raise the minimum wages there, which are ridiculously low. And I met a number of really nice, exciting people there. And so I fashioned this novel. It's basically a medical thriller because the idea was there's a firm in New Zealand that developed a stem cell cure for diabetes, and they needed a lot of money in order to stay in business and keep going. And so they find a way to get that money out of corrupt parties in American Samoa, and the minimum wage hearings that I was testifying at suffered because of this plot. So that was my first novel. Actually, I just reread it last week, just because I wasn't sure how good it was. Now I think it really is a terrific story. So I wrote that. Then I wrote one called Insidious Deception. And it's kind of a combination of Middle East espionage and Middle East espionage, and also a scheme to capture the minerals. That these are the minerals that go into our computers. And
Lithium?
China basically has cornered the market on it, and the folks in this novel decided they wanted to start up a number of these mines which had closed because they're so dirty. And so they were looking for ways to go ahead and get the federal government to fund the cleanup of these mines. And so that was a really interesting one. because that plot kind of mixed with a plot to create a Middle East union. And the plot there is basically finding a way to make the Palestinians happy by giving them their territory and giving them enough money so they could live a decent life. And in return, they would live in an area that would have no guns, no bombs, no nothing. And so the two plots kind of work together. And we had drones in that one, and we had some really interesting hardware that were in the novel. Then the next one was Surviving the Endgame, which is kind of a continuation of Insidious Deception, and it's all the good guys are being attacked by the CEO who headed the plan in Insidious Deception is gone, but there's a new female CEO who picks up right where he left off. And it's the question, well, there are two questions. One, can the good guys survive? And two, can you win a presidential election even though you've done all these wrong things? Is there a way that you can provide campaign baloney that will fool the people? And
Okay,
so
I don't mean to cut you off here, but we've only got about 1 minute left in the interview. Can you quickly give us a synopsis of The Choices, your latest book?
Yes, it's a treasure hunt thriller. It begins 66 million years ago when a huge asteroid crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula, and it generated so much heat and dust that it basically killed all animals on the earth, including the dinosaurs, who had ruled the earth for 100 million years. And there's a young lady at Penn State. She's in their geology department, and they tell her they're going to delay her graduation, and she owes plenty of money in student loans. So she decides she's going to put aside her schoolwork and try and find diamonds that she thinks resulted from the asteroid hit. There were two theories that came out actually as I was writing the book that support that theory, that diamonds would have resulted from that hit. So she obtains funding from a Philadelphia businessman, but it turns out he's crooked, so she escapes to a remote area of Canada when she learns that her financier is after her. And now at the same time she's in Canada, there's a fellow named Gary Levin who's also in the same Canadian village mourning the death of his wife, who was shot by a white supremacist. And he comes into possession of a wounded golden retriever and mysterious flash drive that he's unable to open. And then he returns. There are guys with guns hunting the dog and looking for the flash drive. So he returns to Madison, Wisconsin, and contacts the university IT department. And there's a lady trying to help him open the drive. And then they get chased by men with guns. And eventually, Gary finds a way to get them to Puerto Rico, where he enlists the help of a good friend and a professor in geology to figure out what's going on with this flash drive. And so in spite of the danger of mining the stones and knowing that people are after them, and there's also an approaching hurricane, they pursue the treasure. And that's a real quick summary of that one.
We do have to wrap this up. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, sure. It's just alanlmoss.com.
Okay, and there's links to the books and everything on the
Yes,
website. Yeah. Is
absolutely.
is this book out? The Choices?
Mid-October.
Mid-October. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Sorry, but we do have to wrap it up. Best of luck with your books.